Okay, so let's crack on. So why be part of this group? Well, welfare science is definitely changing the way we think about horses. This is the way that many horses are ridden in today's competitions. Notice the eye, notice the tight nose band, and notice the blue tongue. Hiya. And notice the hyperflexion of the head. And the blue tongue is blue because of the leverage on the shank that compresses the tongue. And the first research systematically examining horses' mouths started in the 1990s, 2000s. And these studies documented visible tissue damage, bruising, ulceration, bleeding, and associations between specific bit types and lesion severity. The tight nose bands make it all worse. From around 2010, the research accelerated. And now, sadly, for all those people out there who don't want this to be true, the evidence is unequivocal. I first really became aware of this research in 2022, which is a long time after. I had no idea. And I did that through the World Bitless Association. Up until then, I, like others, went along with the norm and accepted the idea that bits are necessary. And in the right hands, not a problem. Yet I have bunker bits and a catalogue of horse riding fails to prove that this is not the case. I understand that the understanding of the control that bits enable through pain is not common knowledge, because I didn't know. I also acknowledge that this rider, who was in a dressage test just last week, medium level, doesn't know either. And I also acknowledge that organisations like British Dressage see no reason to change the rules. But when you look at this and how horrific it is, it does need to change. And I believe teaching people what you need to do in easy steps where you feel safe and your horse understands clearly what it needs without a bit is what's needed. So that what I saw happening to not just this horse, but all horses at the event last week can stop or be reduced. Because it's not about banning this, and it's not about not training and not riding horses. It's about being aware of what the equipment that we're using means to the horse. And rather than ignoring it, actually going, is this right in 2026 when we've had all this research? So it's pretty shocking, but there you go. So I know most of you have watched the last one, and then I'm hoping that you watched the last one, because I'm not going to cover the learning theory, and I'm not going to cover what I talked about in that last presentation, which was the launch presentation of this group. This talk just builds on that. So if you get lost, go and watch that one, and then this one will be put up on YouTube as well. So, you can watch it again and see if you can understand what I'm talking about. So what I'll cover tonight is developing calm. And I don't think I realised that I'd never really sat on a calm horse and that I'd never really had a calm horse. I had not understood how much we have to teach horses to be calm and establish that habit in them, and for us to pause with them. So can we teach horses to be calm through pausing, and can we pause ourselves? And then the next one that I'll talk about, so I'll try and stick to 10 minutes, it's really hard. Can you create a verbal stop? So can you stop, be verbal? And the hierarchy of your stop is verbal first, then your seat, then your reins. And hopefully you won't have to use your reins, because your verbal stop and your seat will be so strong, you never have to use your reins. I think I've always used my reins first. I think we always go to our reins first because we love our hands, don't we? How big are my hands? And then the last one is just creating a bridle as a start button. And I won't say much more than that. It's just a really interesting thing to do to see if your horse wants to have the bridle on, and actually you can use that as what's called a start button. And I'll just go into that briefly at the end. So why is calm so important to develop purposefully? Well, horses are prey animals, and their survival instinct is flight first, think later. We all know that. Sometimes they don't even think, do they? It's just flight. It's just like go, 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 and they don't think. So this is the opposite of what we need when we're sat on them. And deliberately building calm as an actual behaviour is essential because it rewires their response hierarchy so that they think before they flee. Can we get them to see these things that they're scared of, which their instinct would mean that they just run away? Can we rewire them so we teach them how to be calm and how to pause and how to go, well, actually, if I just think about this and process it, it's all fine. So the horse, when it's fleeing, is in what's called sympathetic flight or fight mode. And that is a state where it physically can't learn well because cortisol's flooding the system and its focus narrows because it's the perceived threat. And we all know that horses see threats everywhere. A rock could be a threat, you know, a flower can be a threat if it's a purple flower and the other one they saw was a yellow one. So a horse really needs to be in what's called the parasympathetic state. That's the rest, digest, relax state. If we can get it to be in that state and actually teach it to control its flight and fight instinct, we end up with a receptive horse that becomes more curious and can think. So training calm is training the ability to learn. But we don't train calm, do we? We really don't. And every skill from loading to hacking out to lateral work to stopping to halting to being able to stand at a gate, not spooking on hacks, is built on top of emotional regulation. And if calm's not stable, those skills become very, very fragile and they become very place dependent. So a horse that is only calm in certain places, like the familiar settings, like, well, it's fine at home, but I take it out to Kelso and it falls to pieces. That's a horse that hasn't learned that emotional regulation. It's not really learned how to be calm, or it's only learned to be calm in certain situations where it's just not been triggered yet. So how much can we help horses to become calm because we've trained the skill of them being calm so that they don't become triggered, or if they do become triggered, it's like quite a short space of time before they go, yeah, but actually it's fine. And that's about pause and being able to be in their own place and stand still because we've trained that as a behaviour. So anxiety in horses escalates really, really quickly. And we know that if we try and make them stand still, they often don't. It gets worse, doesn't it? And a horse that stands still gets more and more tense when we try and force it to stand still. And usually we force it to stand still by blocking it with our hands, blocking it with our body, or the natural horsemanship approach says, let a horse move its feet. But how we develop the behaviour as standing still is crucial if we're to develop true calm and mental and emotional peace in the horse's mind. Natural horsemanship will say, just get them going round and round and round until they stop. That's not really trained the calm and a horse. They'll stop when they feel uncomfortable or when they give up, but they haven't actually learned the skill of standing still and being calm. That's a behaviour. And we don't train that, okay? We tend to train forwards. So teaching calm changes everything because when a horse feels safe, they can process information more effectively, they learn more quickly, they make better decisions. And what I would say is if we choose to ride and train without equipment which works due to pain, and that would be bits, whips and spurs, sorry, they just do cause pain. That's what the science said. Then we must build something far more powerful. We have to build behaviours that are so deeply ingrained in the horse because they trust us and because they understand what peace is, what calm is, what dealing with things that make them anxious is. That means we'll create a horse who's genuinely feels safe, is emotionally regulated, and more than anything else, that means they can think. So, when calm becomes the foundation, communication replaces that control through pain. Okay? Instead of us going to our hands to a piece of metal that presses on the tongue and the bars, now we have communication. Okay? We don't need to apply pressure, which is then escalated, that then means the horse feels uncomfortable and the horse learns to avoid that happening again. But it depends on your starting point and the behavioural history of your horse as to whether it can take a long time. If you're starting fresh, the horse has never had that history of ever experiencing you applying pressure and escalating it so that it actually causes discomfort somewhere, then it's easier because you can train these behaviours to be, they never have that behavioural repetition. What tends to happen to a horse that has already had that history of being anxious because of pressure and the escalation of pressure is that it's easily triggered and then it rehearses that behaviour again and again in certain situations. So I think that our expectations need to be completely different to that we've previously been taught. Here's Gatsby on Roseesmore, okay, wide open space. We're on the highest point, and he always finds it difficult on the highest point. Why? Because he's exposed. That's where the tigers and the lions could come and get him. So what I've done is I've actually gone, well, fine. If you don't want to be on the highest point, let's see if we can be on a lower point. Let's see what happens if you can stand still and you get rewarded and you get carrots for standing still. Initially, I couldn't get 100 yards away from my horse box on my own because he didn't feel safe. My expectations had to completely change to respecting the fact that he found it all too triggering. And if I didn't let him stand still and pause and teach him to stand still and pause and say, yes, that's fine, you can look at something in the distance, I would rehearse the behaviour of the anxiety because I would get at him and go, come on, let's move, let's move, let's move. Because we are taught that horses need to go forwards. We are not taught to let them process. In fact, if I go back, I know that I've been told and told again, don't let them stand still, otherwise all they'll ever do is stand still. So Gatsby's been very difficult because not only did he have to change, I did too, and it's us changing. That's almost more difficult, I think. Okay, and that's not to say that a horse that doesn't have that history of anxiety won't be easy, but I suspect that many horses, if they go into that wide open space, are going to be the same because they're flight animals. Okay, so you have to start with groundwork. You can't do it from on top, and you have to start with groundwork that is teaching that a pause leads to developing an effective stop, cue, and a halt. Pause is where it all starts, standing still, the horse understanding how to stand still on the ground and having that as a behaviour, which sounds bonkers, doesn't it? If I go back 10 years and somebody said to me, you're going to spend 2 hours in your arena standing still, I'd have gone, what? I need to ride across Wales and back again, I'm not doing that. But in doing that, I now can go to Roseesmore and I'm having a really enjoyable time on my own with my horse that used to be a nervous nightmare. So actually, all those hours of teaching him how to stand still has meant that now he sees a rock and instead of going, I can't possibly go near that, he sees a rock, he looks at it and walks past it. So stopping and the ability to stop, the ability for the horse to pause, because we've taught pause and it knows what pause is, makes us feel safe. If we know we can stop and we know the horse can stand still with us, it just makes us feel safe. So we don't have to put a bit in its mouth. We don't have to grab the reins. Everything becomes so much more enjoyable. And when we feel safe, we're much less likely to use aversives. So what are aversives? Some people will know what they are, some people won't. So an aversive is anything a horse wants to avoid, escape, or stop. Imagine you are coming to a cinema and you want to sit in a chair and I'm stood in front of that chair and you ask me to move and I refuse. I don't say anything. I just stand still and I refuse to move. So you might ask me again to move and you might get closer to me and I might poke you, which will send you a message. The message will be, no, you can't. If you kind of get stroppy with me, I might stand my ground and just poke you a bit further. Eventually, depending on your personality, you'll probably give up quite quickly or not quickly because it's easier to go and find a chair somewhere else. I get what I want. I moved you onto another chair. That's an aversive. You didn't like me poking you. You didn't like me standing there refusing to move. Now think about all the aversive ways we train horses, because we poke them, we pull on them, and mostly that's what we do in the conventional world that I was taught. And the important question isn't, do aversive work? Because they do. If somebody is poking you or pushing you about or just standing too close to you, you'll move away. That's an aversive. So they do work, but how do we feel about them? Because it's the same for the horse. We don't like it. We'll avoid something because it's aversive, and the horse is exactly the same as us. And perhaps that's what's been missing from horse training, that we haven't really thought about the emotional implications to the horse because they don't have the language to tell us. So if you want to train pause and calm without being aversive, so the horse actually learns to stand and pause and be comfortable and have that as a behaviour, what would you do? Well, you can do it at liberty, so you can do it with nothing on their head. If you're using a head collar and a lead rope, I would suggest that you try really hard not to use the rope in any way, because the moment you use the rope, you'll be putting pressure on, and that's an aversive. So you have to police yourself. That's why I say it's really, really hard, because we have to change ourselves. You're training independent work. The horse is independently learning how to stand still. Seems really basic, but it's fundamental and it's left out of traditional training. So the two groundwork exercises to build calm through pause that I would suggest you do is, number one, just standing on a mat, piece of carpet. Everybody's got an old piece of carpet in the house, and horses love mats. And you want to train in a place where the horse feels safe. So it's no good taking the horse to somewhere where it's always looking about it. It needs to be somewhere safe. You could do it in your stable if that's what you wanted to do, because initially you just want the horse to understand that it stands on the mat and it gets a reward. You could train outside your stable, or you can train in the arena, wherever your horse is most comfortable, because where it's most comfortable, it'll be in that parasympathetic state. So it'll be the most receptive to learning. Okay, so you're going to just train it to stand on the mat. Can you take, once it's standing on the mat, and obviously you're going to use your click and your reward as your food, which we talked about in the last presentation. If you use the click and the reward to feed the horse on the mat, then your horse will start to associate the mat with somewhere where the food happens and the reward happens. So once you've got that on the mat, can you take one step away and the horse stays on the mat? Again, sounds really basic. It's really hard. Horses just follow us because that's what we've trained them to do. Horses won't necessarily stand still and stay in one place when you walk off, because they don't have that as a behaviour. But this is all the behaviour that will set the scene for the horse being calm and understanding how to pause, and you understanding how to pause with it. So can you take one step away and the horse remains on the mat? Then you can extend it a bit by, can you walk round the horse? You could keep your hand on the horse to start off with. feed it when you get back to it, click, you know, as you walk around the tail, you could click, feed it when you get back to it. Can you walk around the horse without touching it? Because as you walk around the horse, does it follow you, or does it understand that it stands still and understands what the behavior of standing still is? And then once you've got those behaviors going, can you teach the horse that when you back away from it, it'll stay? How far away can you get? Can you actually teach a horse to stand on a mat while you get all the jumps and the poles out and it's still standing on the mat? How long can you get that period of time where the horse goes, I know what I'm doing, I just stand still, okay? And one good way of developing the standing still time, the duration that the horse stands on the mat, is actually to use a countdown, because it helps us then. Because I'm telling you now, what you think is 3 seconds is probably 1. What you think is 10 seconds is probably 3, because we actually think that time is longer, because we're always rushing through, because we know what we want to do, but the horse doesn't know what we're asking. So by using a countdown, it stops us doing things too fast, which means it's clearer for the horse. But also there's another reason to use a countdown. If I want to extend the duration that the horse can stand on the mat before I click and feed again, then I can say good and then feed. That means I've got 2 seconds. So I've got the click, which is 1 second, and the good, that's 1 second. Once I've got that, if I go 3, 2, 1, good, then I've got 4 seconds, 5 seconds, haven't I? But if I go to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, good, click, then each time I go 3, 2, 1, good, click, the horse knows the click's coming because it's heard the 3, 2, 1 again and again and again and again. So that means that the horse is listening to you and your sounds, and you repeat the same sounds. So if you get to 10, you'd be like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. It hears 5 and it goes, oh, I know. 4, 3, 2, 1, good, click, I need to stand still. So you extend the time, but you help yourself also make sure that you really do 10 seconds. So it's a way of policing ourselves and teaching ourselves to pause and helping the horse have more duration. And what I would say is, believe that what you reward, you'll get more of, and try not to be aversive. So if the horse walks off the mat, we would normally go, come back here, get the lead rope, and we push it back. Well, you know, the best thing to do in that situation is to either see what happens if you do nothing, because if you've only ever rewarded on the mat, give the horse the chance to go, oh yeah, I remember, I've got to go to that mat and reward, because we need to give them that processing time and give them, because that's the only way they're going to learn the behavior, okay? So then the second one, once you've got that going and the horse is standing on the mat and the horse won't get off the mat, and now you've got a horse that will go nowhere because you've rewarded it only for standing on the mat. Now you want to see if you can get the horse going to the mat. So that's why there's a little bucket. So you've got that little bucket there. And you can use a bucket, put say a couple of drops of food in the bucket, and then you can walk to the mat and say mat, and then see if the horse will go to the mat. Can you now go back to the bucket, put some food in the bucket, have the horse? Can you get the horse to boom around back to the mat? The idea isn't that it follows you all the time. The idea is that you can get to the point where you literally stand like that girl and point and go mat, and the horse just magically goes, oh yeah, I'm going to the mat by itself. And for those of you that have watched my Instagram channel on my Facebook, I gave myself the challenge of seeing if I could train Gatsby to do 6 jumps and just set him off, go, off you go. And he did 6 jumps in order, and he did. And that just started with standing on the mat, pointing to a mat and saying, go to the mat, okay? So again, how would you extend that? Well, you're going for independence. You're not going for the horse following you. You are going for the horse going away from you, you believing that that horse will get to the mat because it's got a brain. And we don't think horses have brains. Or at least I didn't realise. When this first happened to me, I was just blown away, because I could not believe that horses had the capability to understand this sort of thing. And I've had horses for years. So can you introduce 2 mats and boomerang from one mat to another? Can you put a pole or a jump? Can you get to the point where you can literally go, there's your mat, you're standing on it, now can you go to the other mat, but you've got to get over that jump while you're doing it. And you can have the most fun ever doing this. What I think possibly more fun than ever that I've ever had in my life before. And it's endless, the fun. The only restriction on the fun is your imagination as to what you can build next or set up next. Okay. But of course, the fun comes along with the serious stuff, which is training for calm, training for pause. And if you can't get your horse to move, then a target, which again was in the first presentation, a target will help you get the draw to move. But once the horse understands the mats, can you get them to trot to it? Can you get them to canter to it? They love the mats, and they really, really get a strong draw to a mat. And that's what you're aiming for, independently. Because then the horse understands this is a place where I go to and I stand and I pause and I wait. And they learn this regulation just by standing still. Now, obviously, you can't take a mat out hacking, but it does transfer. It transfers. And all I can say is when you're out, you can adopt the same thing, which is, well, let's just pause then. The same thing, let's pause. Let's look at what you want to look at and we'll pause. And we'll have that as a behaviour out hacking. Really calms them down. So what happens when you want to train for ridden pause and ridden calm? Well, here you're going to train to go and stand on the mat. So you're going to tack up your horse, be in your arena. You can make this place, you can make the area smaller if you want. But literally, can you now get your horse to go to the mat? If you've done enough groundwork, they will go, oh, that's a mat, I'm going there. And you don't need to steer. And even if you do need to steer, you can just help them. And if it's a small area, they'll hit the mat. As soon as they hit the mat, you're going to click reward. And the thing about clicking and rewarding is the click means yes, it's just a communication system, but it's a non-aversive communication system. And that really helps horses because non-aversive stuff means that they are able to think, they get curious, they learn how to learn. Okay, so you basically are going to do the same thing, training the horse to stand on the mat, walk off the mat. Can they come back to the mat? Can they come back to the mat independently? Every time they hit that mat, reward, 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 reward. Can you trot around the arena? Can you go mat? And the horse goes back to the mats, which literally is what happens, okay? Reward only on the mat. Click, then feed. Allow the horse to go wherever it wants as a passenger. And obviously, you know, if it's really not getting the idea, just get off. Go, look, we're going on the mat. This is the behaviour. This is the behaviour. And they will literally go, oh, right, I get it now. Sit on the horse, you know, just make the area smaller. Okay, and then how do you extend that? Where you can move between 2 mats on a circle, move between 4 mats in a large area. What I would say is this is creating a context. The mat is a place. It's a very strong context, which makes sense to the horse. They truly understand that the mat means stop without you having to do anything other than say mat and ride towards the mat. And they absolutely love this. They just love it. Probably because it's so obvious what we want them to do. And I think, and I know with my own horses, they've spent their life guessing what I want. And it's like a breath of fresh air to them. And the light bulb comes on and they go, finally, I know what the human wants. I'm going to that mat. The mats always mean stop and they always mean pause. It's just you who need to create enough pause and train yourself. My rule is I have to pause for as long, if not longer, than I've ridden. So when I hit the mat, I have got to make sure that if I've been riding for 5 seconds, I pause for 5 seconds. Because if I hit the mat and go, right, let's go, I'm not really training pause. And pause and this kind of training where you give the horse the choice to go to the mat, the horse makes the decision itself, the horse understands what the behaviour is, that trains calm, it trains peace, It trains understanding, and the horse now can stand on the mat and go, excellent, I know what I'm doing. And I don't think that a lot of them know what they're doing. They guess. And they live a life of guessing and trying to avoid the aversives. And that's the truth. That's me as a traditional person who spent many years training with many of the top horse trainers in the world. I believe that now is, I believe that now is what I was doing. And I didn't know what I didn't know, okay? So have we got any questions before we go on? No, I don't think there's anything on there. Use the word mat to indicate that you want the horse to go to the mat. Believe the mat that will do the job, not your reins, not your legs. Try and be passive. Try and see if you can get that independence. Ridden, can you get the independence? And it sounds bonkers, doesn't it? I mean, like, I think about it now and I still think it's slightly bonkers. But it is magic what it does to horses. Really magic. Has anybody got any questions?
So, when you pause the moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
not how you do it. When you're ready to go.
Oh, I would say I would use a verbal. I would use a click click. Yeah, or walk on. Whatever your verbal is for walking on. And I train that on the ground first. It's not that I don't use my legs, and it's not that you won't use your legs. It's just that you want to see whether you can be as non-aversive as possible. So you get to the mat, and now you would say, okay, let's go. Okay. So yes, after you pause. The idea isn't that you stay on the mat forever. The idea is that you use the mat to train yourself and the horse about pause and standing still. And then the mat becomes a very powerful place to train more. So Gatsby, for instance, is learning how to do shoulder in. I've been trying to do it at Liberty. It's so hard. Now I'm doing it on the line. I can get the shoulder in because his mat draw is so strong. Because he understands going to the mat is where we stop and where we pause. And he gets rewards.
Every time. As soon as you get to the
Whenever you click, you will reward. Doesn't mean to say you can't feed without clicking. And that's another skill, which is, you know, again, give me a week and I can talk to you about it. But the mats are really powerful for creating calm. And it's the calm that we want. That's just one way of getting it. There are other ways of getting it, but I found that mats are super, super, super helpful. So somebody said, how do you move on to having the pause, calm and standing still when there isn't a mat available, e.g. when hacking? That comes from training the pause and the calm on the mat. And then once you've got it on the mat, you then go to getting it not on the mat in a safe place. So you're just training the behaviour. The mat makes it easier to train in the first place. And it's a bit like using a target. You know, positive reinforcement, people use targets to get horses to move. You're not going to carry on using the target forever. What you are going to do is to train your body movements, to train your verbal cues, to get the horse moving with you so that the target isn't needed. Every now and then you might get the target out when the horse gets stuck. The mats are just the same. The mats are a way to teach the behaviour in the first place, and to also give us a place where we know I'm going to stop there. Because we tend to get too busy. Well, I don't know. I'm only speaking about myself here. I get too busy. I've got a million things that I want to do, and I don't give my horse time to breathe, really, or myself. So it's not that you will carry on using the mats forever. When I'm out hacking with Gatsby on Rose Esmore, if he wants to stop, I allow him to stop. And believe me, in the first 2 to 3 months, he stopped a lot, often about 10 feet away from the horse once. We'd maybe go 100 yards and then we get back in again. But I allowed him to pause because I want that to be a behaviour, because pause and being able to stand still and getting rewarded for standing still means that anxiety reduces, because we just keep going, go, 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 go. So does that answer you, Sam?
talk about targets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use maps.
Yeah.
Use the same. You see something, and it can be, say, it's that table there.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
You give 13 seconds.
Yeah.
And because I've used targets, I use the word touch.
Yeah.
And because she's processed it,
Yeah, well, that is another really good.
Rein,
Yeah.
you will go. I'll say touch. She'll go once she's processed what it is and she thinks it's same. I say touch and she'll go and touch it. And then treat, and then I can treat her.
Yeah, so that's another strategy. Like I say, if I had a whole week,
I know.
great, wouldn't it?
I'm just thinking of like
Yeah, that's another strategy. So a strategy is that you teach pause, but you also teach them to touch something, because once they've touched it, it's not frightening anymore. And that is another strategy. But that sort of teaches calm as well, doesn't it? Because in touching it, you then say, go stand next to that, touch it, I'll reward you. So you are training pause. You just put training pause to touch something that they've been a bit wary about. So these are all extensions of the activity, which is, let's train the horse to stand still on a mat to start off with. How much can we train the pause on the mat? Can we have, you could even have, you can develop it into a cue, can't you? So that I go, and whoa becomes my verbal cue, but I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So just pat her. So this is Amy and she's got something to ask.
Well, there's more to add.
Okay, yeah.
The pause.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing, particularly with very anxious is, I've used the mat to teach whoa and teach the pause, but I also teach a head down here.
Yeah.
Which I do on
Yes.
cue for that, which I've been through various things, and now I just use the word chill. I forgot that because it's quite cool.
But you could use any word as long as it's your word that you're always consistent with, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But, and that's really helpful when you're then in a situation where there is no mat and the horse has stopped, but it's still anxious.
And like touching an object, that's another strategy. And you know, that's one of the foundational behaviors, isn't it? So back on the first thing, teach a head down. You can also use a head down as a start button. So the horse puts a head down, you know, it's ready to start. You know, the topic of positive reinforcement and the kind of skills that you build around positive reinforcement is massive. It's utterly massive. And you know, we touch the tip of the iceberg really as to what's possible. So yeah, head down, very useful. But for the purposes of people understanding a strategy to just basically help them pause, help their horse pause, just get a piece of carpet, teach your horse to pause. Once that's really well solidified in the arena, now can you go round the arena and pause using a verbal cue? Because you ride up to the mat and use your verbal cue, which is what's coming next. Next little 10 minutes then. I have no idea whether that was 10 minutes, but there you go. I feel like I'm doing quite good because I haven't gone into midnight yet. So it's like that though, isn't it? God, I could speak for days. Okay, so what have we got? We've got here. Right, so the next one was a hierarchy of cues for stopping. Okay, because this is all about making people feel safe. When you take the bit out of the horse's mouth, and now you go off to the beach or the gallops or wherever, and you go, I won't be able to stop. I don't like it. I'm going to put the bit back in the horse's mouth. So if you train a hierarchy of cues, hierarchy just means that one is more important than the other. You've got the next important and the next important. So the goal isn't more control. The goal is clearer communication with less aversion. So that word there, that aversive stuff, we want to try and avoid that or be minimal with it as we can possibly be. You can't avoid aversion at all. You really can't, but we can be aware of minimizing it. Least intrusive, minimally aversive is a kind of term. Lieber is what it's called. So a hierarchy allows the horse to respond to the least intrusive cue first. The reins are the most aversive. And yet they're the things we go to because our hands were just like, they're just sort of hand orientated. I call myself handsy. I've banned myself from a whip and banned myself from a lunge line because I get too handsy. So the reins are the most aversive, especially if there's a bit at the end. And we want the least aversive. Why? Because we're concerned with the emotions of the horse. If we think about the emotions of the horse and we're training for calm and pause, and we are not being aversive, the horse will find peace. The horse will get more and more relaxed, which is why I say I had never had a calm horse before, because I didn't understand about aversives and I didn't understand about the emotions of the horse and how I was contributing to the emotional triggering of the horse. Won't I get more relaxed, more balanced halt if I'm not adding tension down the reins? Sure I will. If I don't use equipment which causes at best discomfort and at worst pain when I escalate the pressure, then I'll get way more relaxation. Okay, so my hierarchy is to use the voice first. I don't care about anybody else, that's what I do. This is what I've trained myself to do, because if I'm honest about my hierarchy, I would use the reins and my seat at the same time. I never use my voice, because you're not allowed to use your voice in a dressage test. Shh, not allowed to be noisy. And that's ridiculous, isn't it? Because we all go, so why are we not using our voice? So I've completely changed. I don't do what I used to, and I've become very aware now of, do I use my voice first, then my seat, which is just slowing your seat down, and then do I use my reins? And the horse needs to learn that all three mean stop. They all mean the same thing. Can we isolate them? So can I train so that I only use my voice and I don't use my seat and I don't use my reins? Can I train that I only use my seat and I don't use my voice and I don't use my reins? Can I train so that I use my reins and I don't use my voice and my seat? I isolate them all, because then that means when I go to the beach or when I go out hacking on Rose Esmore, I've got all three and they all work, but my voice is the strongest because my voice is the least aversive, okay? And if you can use the least aversive, that's the most pleasant and the most emotionally calming for the horse. So the more you can train that really strong verbal cue, that is your cue that you use with your horse. Some people use a whistle, don't they? I can't whistle, that's just ridiculous. But you could use chill. I usually put and in front of it, because that's like a half halt. It's like a preparation, isn't it? The question is, if we isolate them, which is the strongest? And I'm telling you now that if you haven't thought about this, it'll be your reins. And if you go hunting, it'll be your reins. And if you go eventing, it'll be your reins. And if you go show jumping, it'll be your reins. Unless you're Brendan Wise or Serena McCullough, because she was very good when we listened to her, wasn't she, about she doesn't really want anything, does she? She really wants that horse listening to her seat, but she doesn't use her voice, does she? Which is fine if that works for her. Personally, I found my voice works really well and I train it on the ground first. So what I had never taught is the emotional implications on the horse. I'd never thought about it. When we use multiple and confusing cues which escalate and they're based on negative reinforcement, which may feel like positive punishment to the horse. Because we don't know when negative reinforcement becomes positive punishment. That was in the last one, the last talk. It's not that the seat or reins isn't used. It is that the creation of a verbal cue as the strongest and first cue means that the seat and rein cue can be used to create understanding about those cues. So if you've got a really strong verbal cue, you can then use that verbal cue to teach the seat by using the seat first, just a fraction of a second before you say and whoa. And you can then transfer the verbal cue onto your seat or combine the two, okay? What you really want is your verbal cue with your seat, and then do you just not have to use your reins? That would be the best, wouldn't it? And the rein cue then becomes communication rather than pressure that escalates and then becomes aversive. And that's kind of like a light bulb for me, really. Because in the past, I've used my reins, and I still do because I'm handsy. That's just me. I've got to accept it. It's just one of my flaws. My reins can become communication, not an aversive escalation of pressure. If I use the verbal cue and apply the reins, the horse goes, oh, yeah, that means stop as well. Okay, so there's multiple cues that I can build to mean stop. I can combine them, I can isolate them, or I can just use one, the highest one, hopefully, that's the non-aversive. And, you know, if the horse is worried, my verbal cue might not work very well, so I might have to back it up with reins. But ideally, I'm heading towards more and more calm through teaching pause, through the horse becoming more and more in that parasympathetic state so that it listens more and more. And then, you know, I can just use my voice. Okay. So we do live in a realistic world, though. I am very much realistic. You will need those reins. Horses get scared. Riders make mistakes. Emergencies happen. And a cue hierarchy doesn't remove the reins. It simply makes things clearer to the horse. And that's the emotional power of it for the horse. And it also makes it clearer for us. I think I've just been in a muddy kind of puddle for a long time, wondering how to get these things. Everybody goes, slow your eyes down, and slow my eyes down, and nothing happens. If I had £1 for every time I've been told slow my eyes down on Gatsby, I would literally be a billionaire. But, you know, there's nothing else backing it up, is there? You know, and when they don't listen to your eyes, you just go to your hands and then they go, ah, like this. So the power of understanding the hierarchy of cues, which is the most aversive, which is the least aversive. How can I train the verbal cue? Using my mats. I'll get to my mat and stand on my mat, having said and whoa before I get there, you know. So the goal isn't no reins. The goal is fewer reins and a rein that is minimally aversive. And the hierarchy will work better the calmer the horse is. So that's information, isn't it? If your voice in your seat isn't working, it's telling you that the horse isn't that calm. That's what it's telling you. And that information is really useful information because it means your horse is slightly triggered. So it might mean you need to go somewhere else and train more calm, dip your toe in the water, get out the horse box, stand there for half an hour, giving your horse carrots, get back in the horse box, having sat on your horse and gone nowhere on Rosesmal. But it's worked because now I can poop around Rosesmal. And it's acknowledging the horse's emotional right to process information and start to learn how to deal with the situation and not be triggered because we go, come on, that's it now, got to go. I decided I was going to do 10 miles on Rosesmal and you're bloody well going to do it. Okay. So the groundwork now build the ridden cues. And remember, you're using that terminal bridge, the click and reward. Okay, that's the positive reinforcement. The click is just, yes, you did it. And the click allows you to time exactly when the horse does what you want. It can be so powerful because it allows you to go, yes, that was what I want. Okay, and then the horse goes, oh, yeah, I'll do that again. Okay, so you use the terminal bridge, you use the click, mat, horse arrives on mat, click, feed, reward, pause. Pause for the amount of time it took you to get there and more, so that you get a lot of pause on the mat. It must be as long as the riding when you're training. And the troubleshooting is, if your horse doesn't stop, no bother, either get off and train on the ground or come round again and help with a slight rein aid. You know, they might have to walk over the mat a few times, but if they're really strong on the click actually means stop. You don't really want it necessarily to carry on meaning stop. You can click as the horse puts its foot on the mat and they'll go, whoa, what happened? How did I get the click? And that's the curiosity and that's the power and that's the learning that I never knew existed until sort of 2021 and started dabbling in this. But be realistic. Remember, the goal is less rain and eventually no rain. If your training is clear and consistent, then your horse will get it really fast. But the calm beforehand and the groundwork training first is crucial to the learning speed when you get on and ride. Horses like us do not learn when they're confused or frustrated. And yes, horses get very frustrated with us. So once your horse has got a strong mat draw, you just start to point, say the mat, and as your horse arrives, use your halt or stop cue. Okay, so this is presuming that your horse understands now it goes to mats. Now you can start to introduce your and whoa or and chill. I'd suggest not shouting because obviously shouting is something that makes you go, what were we shouting about? And actually, Will Bittless lady Joanna was constantly saying to me, what, so noisy, be quiet. Horses like quiet, and I've become much quieter now, although I still get very enthusiastic. So you train it on the ground first, near and further away. How far away can you be when you go and whoa to the mat? Once the behaviour is strong, get on, start training the exact thing ridden. Start with one mat, place your training the same, build it ridden and build it systematic. And you will get to jumping 6 jumps on the ground if that's what you want. Can you get it at trot, ridden? Can you get it at canter, ridden? Can you get it with no reins? And then we enter into the bridleless riding. Can you start to get it in other places, out hacking, different arenas? Because hopefully your verbal and woe will take over from the mat. You won't need the mat anymore. You can just basically come down the centre line and go, ah, whoa. And the horse should stop if it's calm, not at Kelsall though. Try really hard to remain passive, build the verbal cue, wait. This is the big one, believe it'll happen. I don't think we believe it will happen. The more you get into this, the more you go, oh, I never thought that would happen. You have to believe. The mat provides the context, the place to anchor the behaviour. Once that behaviour is anchored to the mat, you can start to then anchor it to a verbal cue. Once you've got your verbal cue, your horse goes around down the arena and you can go, and whoa. And all of a sudden the horse goes, oh, I know what that means. So, and obviously if you click reward, then you're saying, yes, that's what I wanted. So, what we got next? What I would say is the loopy training principle, and yes, that is a thing, is super useful in this situation because you can noodle about using the loopy training principle, video yourself to check that what you're doing is actually what you think you're doing is actually what you are doing. Because I'm telling you now, you go, what did I do that? That was really crazy. It'll tell you whether you're applying the rein aid without realizing. So we sometimes don't realize that we've actually applied the rein aid if we're riding. So the loopy training principle is just something where you do 3 clean repeats. So you would say, and whoa, the horse stops, you click the reward. So it might be that you're using the mat, and each time you ride and you go to the mat, you say, and whoa, stop, the horse stops with no rein, you click reward. If you get the horse not stopping, or you have to use your reins, or you have to, then that wouldn't be a clean repeat. And this is a principle, I think was it Alexandra Kurland, I think, started this with some doctor or other. I wrote it down in some other notes, can't remember. All I know is I like the loopy training principle. So the loop repeats until the behaviour is fluent. And the fluency is that it has to be clean for 3 times before you move on to the next thing. Okay, so if you're extending the behaviour into something else, so say you were doing it at walk, you'd have to have 3 really clean, good ones before you tried it at trot. Okay, then if you keep overshooting the mat, you haven't got a clean loop. 3 clean loops, one after the other, before you try it at canter. Okay, so that loopy training principle is useful for everything. If you think about it, whatever you're doing, you go, I need 3 clean loops before I change to something else that's harder, or I change to an additional thing that I want the horse to do. So if you start to combine the cues to understand the seat, you go voice, seat, stop, click, reward, and only add in the reins when this is fluent for 3 times in a row. Okay, does that make sense, that you're building these 3 clean loops of behaviour? So horse training is very much of a seesaw. You get too much woe and you get too much go. And if your horse is stuck to the mat, you're going to click for stepping off. You're going to click for forward thoughts. You're going to click for movement. If your horse is rushing, you're going to click for standing, click for pausing, click for calm. The goal isn't stop, the goal isn't go, the goal is balance. You want equal amounts of woe and go, so that when you go out and you're galloping down the beach and you go, oh, whoa, your horse will stop. Because it's got equal go and equal woe, yeah? And obviously you need that terminal bridge. That's the most powerful thing that you can do with horses, this terminal bridge, the click. The click that means yes, I'm a word. You don't have to use a click. Is it Matilda Brandt goes like that, which would be very embarrassing at working equitation, wouldn't it? Oh my God. So remember, the pause must be as long as the riding when you're training. And then the troubleshooting, if your horse doesn't stop, no bother, get off, train on the ground. We'll come round again and help with a slight rein aid. Just be realistic. The goal is less rein and eventually no rein. And if your training is clear and consistent, your horse will get it. So it is this seesaw thing. Okay. How much woe have you got? How much go have you got? Mostly I have too much go with Gatsby. And then when I have too little go or I get balance, everybody goes, oh, he's really flat today. And I'm like, no, it's just calm. It's just being a Jamaican. And that's good, isn't it? That's really good when you Gatsby. So there you go. I've got a little thing here that says questions.
So on the yard, after I've spent a lot of time getting a calm and standing still, like, yeah, to actually get on there. And then we get on. And the first thing she does is she'll set off, but she'll stop in the middle of the yard and want to look at everything before she moves on. Look, this tractor's coming. This car's going.
Yeah, and they need time to process. So yeah. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. It may be that a better tactic is to allow her to process to the point where she goes, oh, I'm all right now. Because you are allowing her the emotional time to come to terms with something without going, yeah, but you've got to do it. And that's a bit like us sitting on the high board in the swimming pool and somebody behind us going, come on, you've got to go, you've got to go. And you might sit there and go, no, I need 20 seconds longer, I need 20 seconds longer. And then the more that you think you're going to be pushed, the worse it gets.
You know, she was, I mean, I didn't know what year then, she can be like a donkey here. But a very neurotic, you could call it, highly sensitive mare. If she'd been out of work for a week or 2 weeks, it was literally like starting again. And I could take her out and she would see a rock. And we could stand literally with our head in the air, shaking from head to toe for up to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that mare taught me so much, because the slightest bit of pressure, and by that I just mean a gentle can we go now, always meant that you were going to be there for a lot longer. So the best thing that I could do when she stopped was sit and stroke her and wait. And that meant that within a week, I had a horse that was going anywhere that I asked her to go.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because now, having trained for pause in the arena, trained for the pause out in the woods, once I got the calm and the pause in the woods, trained on Rose Esmond. Now I would say, I need to make sure that my horse isn't too triggered before I go. I have to be careful of the context that I take my horse into, so that I have enough emotional resilience for the horse to cope with that particular context.
I couldn't agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about,
So somebody's asked, so Sally said that 13 seconds comes from studies that were done on the startle response. It was just on average, it took around 13 seconds to change from startle to investigation. But it's not a given. It can be longer, it can be shorter, it's just a guide. Thanks, Sally, for that. So it's a study. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because, if we're actually thinking about conventional riding, that's an interesting one. Let's count 13. But then if you end up going down the route of consent-based training, you're actually going to build behaviours, which then mean that you notice when the horse is being too triggered. So you would go, well, that's too much for the horse. Let's go back and train in a different context, a different environment, get more confidence and more curiosity, build my relationship. The horse understands it doesn't have to go forward just because I want to. And And all that's information, and it's not necessarily information that we have been receptive to. So somebody, let me just see, I said, so Kathy on Zoom has asked, what would you do if your horse pauses on a hat, then is rewarded, then turns to go home? That would be a context where turning to go home meant it was too triggered and I shouldn't be there. And that's a hard thing to accept because we all want to go places, don't we? But what I would say is that as I continued on my consent-based training and I have worked on that consent and I've accepted that my horse has emotions that I must watch, understand, use as information, he's got braver and braver. And I don't think he would turn to go home now. And part of that is because he has these other things that he can do, like touching it. Or I don't ask him to go nearer than he's happy with. So Kathy, there are a lot of things that you can do before the horse turns to go home, not necessarily in that environment, to build behaviours that mean the horse changes its emotional viewpoint to what it might be worried about when it's out on a hat. So you're literally going to teach the horse how to have the emotional confidence and the emotional skills to go, well, what's that? And then you're going to say, it's okay, we can stand, I'll reward you. What I found with Gatsby was he actually couldn't eat anything other than carrots. It had to be a really high reward. He literally would not eat because he was too triggered. And what I think now is that I should basically train in more controlled environments and build the change into the other environments much more slowly. The beach has been interesting because he's got better the more that I allow him to wander about going wherever he wants. Go sniff that rock, look at that seaweed, what's that over there? So whereas 2 years ago I'd been like, come on, we're going down the beach, now we're trotting, now we're cantering. Now I actually set off and I go where we go at Gatsby. And I do the same on Rosesma as well because there's many paths. Are we going left or are we going right? Or are we just standing still? So the turning to go home will be at the end of a triggering situation where we probably should have got off and gone home before that happened. And that's not to criticize anybody who gets into that situation because I've been in that situation. But it is interesting how your viewpoint changes when you start using more consent-based training and you actually start to think about the emotional response of the horse being perfectly reasonable and you just haven't trained enough calm in it. Because that's the more calm you get, the better things get. And then your horse tells you, everybody tells you your horse is flat over the poles. So he seems to have, so Kathy says he seems to have lost his confidence recently, but I'll work on that with him. Yeah, do that. Work on mats and training paws. Then when you've got it without the mats, see whether you can walk down the road in hand or walk down the track or go out somewhere and get the paws in hand. Obviously, you'd be wearing a halter, you're wearing a halter for safety, but you can just put the lead rope over your arm and use that. It's all that training and understanding that we can train a verbal pause, we can click and reward for that pause and the standing still. And the more we do that, the more we reward standing still and pausing, the more that becomes a behaviour that becomes comfortable to the horse. And they use that then to cope with these tricky situations. Does that help, Kathy? Hopefully it does. All right, if that's no more questions, so move on to the next bit. And then we'll have questions at the end anyway. Right, so the bridle is a start button, which I think is very cool, although I can't do it out hacking, obviously. So what if the bridle wasn't a signal that work was about to happen? Or what if it was the horse's way of telling you that they want you to get on their back? And this sort of happened accidentally with me because Gatsby would throw his head in the air rather than have me put his bridle on. And that was right from the day I bought him. And I didn't quite know how to get rid of that behaviour. So I kind of ended up going, well, I'll go and sit on the fence so that I'm high up so that he can't throw his head up and I'll just wait for him to come to me. And then I realised that I'd created a start button. And all the start button is that the horse does something that tells you that it's ready. So putting its head down before it then walks off could be a start button. So I've created a bridle, which is a start button. So when a horse voluntarily presents for the bridle, They are giving information about their emotional state and whether they actually want you to get on them. They're showing, I understand what's going to happen. You are going to get on me. I feel safe for you to get on me. I'm willing to participate because they've made the choice to come to you with nothing on their head. And I'm not trying to avoid the process. That's really important because it tells you they're emotionally happy. And in the past, I had to tie my horse up. I had to go to, and then the problem becomes, as you put the bridle on, you've got to take the head collar off and then put it around the neck, and then they can still throw the head up, can't they? And then there is this process of teaching the horse to lower its head, but I don't know. This is just so cool. And I do think it's very achievable for everybody if you've got a safe place like an arena that you use. So why does it matter? Standing still is not the same as willingness. A lot of horses do stand still because they've been trained to stand still through learned helplessness. They don't do it as a behaviour so much as, I better do this, otherwise I'll get pushed or poked. Something aversive will happen to me. A horse can stand still because it feels trapped and is avoiding pressure and has learned helplessness. And yes, that is a thing. Or because it genuinely feels safe and ready. And the start button helps us tell the difference. And I think telling the difference is super important because it tells us a lot about how the horse feels about us, say, after we've been out doing pole work where the horse didn't have a choice. Do they still come to you when you sitting on the fence in the arena to go, yeah, put my bridle on the day after you've gone to the dressage test and you've had your horse in a headlock and given it a blue tongue? I suspect it wouldn't. Okay. But of course we don't know because that person probably didn't do that. But for me, it's been like, that's really useful information that tells me whether my horse didn't really like what I did yesterday or the day before. How's my emotional connection with my horse going? And I'm not making my horse do this. My horse is choosing to do it. So a horse that feels heard, has choice, and is respected as having emotions is safer, calmer, and will learn better. So using the mats and becoming a trusted partner who communicates without pressure or coercion means you will have a horse who willingly comes to you and chooses riding. This is just the 5 domains. This is what World Horse Welfare say they've adopted. This is what British Horse Society say they've adopted. This is what British Dressage say they've adopted. This is what all the organisations that are there to police horses say they've adopted. And if you read, sometimes you go, have they really adopted it, or are they just saying they've adopted it? So the horse has an agency. That just means the horse has a voice in the process. They can say yes or not yet. And mostly we think that when we allow a horse to say not yet, they'll say not yet forever. I'll tell you now, that's not the case if you build the behaviours through positive reinforcement. They'll actually want to do more and more. So the 5 domains says they need positive experiences. Starting when the horse is ready creates a more positive experience and builds confidence in the ridden process. Okay. Control. The horse has control over how and when they engage. That builds trust and security. If he doesn't come to me, if he doesn't want me to ride him, I would go, holy shit, what did I do? Not, come here now, you're going to have me riding. It's information. It's information. It's extremely important because they are a sentient animal. And we have a responsibility to respect that. It's better welfare. It meets all 5 of those domains and it supports physical and mental well-being. Gives them better quality of life. And good welfare is not simply the absence of suffering. It includes all the 5 domains. So when the horse says, yes, I'm ready, you are much likely to begin with relaxation, which means your horse won't buck you off, hopefully. You have their attention, which means they are ready to learn and they're listening and they're focused. They have emotional regulation, which means that they're not going to be jumping up and down and you going, whoa, whoa, whoa with the reins, which I've done a lot in my life. They just have better learning. So here's Gatsby. He's just left that blue pan and I speeded it up because otherwise. And he comes over to me. I'm just sat over there waiting. And I've clicked to say yes when he touched the bridle. And then I put it on And then he's not quite close enough because I'm an older woman now. So you'll see me put my hand up. I'm not, and then he comes in. But he made the choice to come to me. And that's how I ride all the time in the arena. He makes the choice to come to me. Okay? Very cool. Let's see if we can play it again. So there's the blue bucket. He's left that. That'll have food in it because he'd rather be with me. And why would he rather be with me? Because the click releases dopamine. And dopamine's a chemical that makes them feel good. And if your click and reward is strong enough and your positive reinforcement is strong enough, you'll end up with the click being more important to the horse than the food, which is pretty magic, really. So, amazing horses are not created through equipment which works through pain or the threat of pain. They are created through using the science. Calm is because you give the horse choice. Calm is because the choice gives the horse more connection with you. When you reward for the calm, you get more calm and you get more emotional regulation the more you train for calm. And all that calm builds and builds and builds until you have a horse that ends up understanding what calm is inside itself. And then you will, I hope, be able to do more of the normal things like go eventing and what have you. But we always have to remember the horse is a flight animal and the horse may be triggered by things like that. And it remains to be seen, really, whether you can go out and do that sort of thing. Can you go out hunting and, you know, still keep that emotional regulation? Because obviously they're a flight animal, they get very, very excited. But it is the power that we should work towards showing other people. And there aren't enough people doing this, and there needs to be more. Over 20, I think it was about 22,000 people visited my Eventbrite page. How many actually signed up for a free presentation? That tells you there's interest. And what I hope is the more that I do these things, we will have 1,000 people. We will have 1,500 people. But, you know, it is a little bit, it's kind of amazing that 22,000 people visited the page to look at the tickets. Maybe, you know, maybe the word bitless, you know, is something that puts them off. Right, so somebody's asked about traffic. What about training a horse that's terrified of traffic? That's Angela on Zoom. Being terrified of traffic is usually about the proximity of the traffic. How close is the traffic? Anything that a horse is scared of, there will be a distance where it copes with the scaredness. So you have to find out what distance that is. So let's not talk about traffic, but let's say talk about a bag, okay, that's not moving, just a bag that's there, and the horse sees it. It might be that some horses can't go near 10 meters. It might be that some horses need to be 20 meters away. So the distance away from the thing that the horse is scared of is really important, because there will be a distance where it can process it and stand and observe it and think about it, and you can then reward for that calm. So you're going to reward for pausing and actually thinking, yes, that's traffic, but it might be that you need to be 100 yards away from it. You might need to be 200 yards away from it. That's the training. How close can the horse cope before it can't cope? Because ideally you're going to train before it can't cope, and then the boundary where it can cope and how close it can get will get closer and closer. Then there's the other thing is, can you actually introduce it to traffic that doesn't move and it touches it? So you know, Wendy was talking about her horse that's young. She's taught it to touch things that it is scared of. So she's actually used that as a strategy. But really, being terrified of traffic is about how fast it's moving, how loud it is. There's a lot of variables there. So you want to train looking at the distance and looking at, you know, controlling the speed, controlling the loudness, so that you gradually introduce the horse to more and more movement, closer traffic, but using the click and the terminal bridge and the idea of pausing and standing still and rewarding with food for standing still. That will teach the horse that it doesn't need to run away. But you can't do that if it's so close that it's about to basically charge off with you. So really, Angela, it's just basically how loud is the traffic? How fast is the traffic? How near is the horse? Can you make it quieter? Can you make it slower, if not stationary? And can you find the place where your horse or the horse is not scared? And then you would find that you could build that new behaviour.
No.
And then somebody's saying they're intrigued about the consent before you got to the arena. Did you lead him down to the arena? No, I don't lead him down to the arena, but I do have to put something around his neck to get from the gate to the arena. Otherwise, it's in my garden. And then if he decides he's going to go off in my garden, I get told off for having hoof prints in my garden. But I do always get him to come with me down the track. That's quite a long way. I would say that's probably 80 metres. And he always wants to come with me down the track. If he didn't want to come down with me down the track, I would know there was something wrong and that probably I had overtrained, and then he would get arrested. So he has choice. It's just that when he goes from the gate, from the track to the arena, which is probably about, I don't know, 20, maybe 10 metres, I have to put the thing around him, because otherwise he gets into my garden and my garden's a bit posh, and that would be a good idea. But he does, but I do use consent, because I don't put the bridle on him ever to go in. And sometimes I just throw the bridle around his neck and then he comes through the gate. We have to obviously live in the real world. I have fenced it in for the youngsters. And ideally you would leave the gate open, and if they wanted to go out, I have a round pen. I do leave the gate with the round pen open for the youngsters, and if they wanted to go out, they could. They never do, because they just love the activities. So consent-based training is being realistic at the same time as paying attention to giving the horse as much consent as you can within the confines of your environment. Does that answer your question? I've got two new. Thank you for this. Found it very helpful. I am yet to catch up with your first meeting. Do you know if there are any specific organisations like a bitless riding club that offer bitless lessons, or is it currently mostly self-taught? I would say it's mostly self-taught. I'm not aware, but I think there's one in Italy, but it depends where you live in the world, so whether you can go to Italy. Joanna from the World Bitless Association is the woman maybe to ask, or go to the World Bitless website, and you will find on the World Bitless website that there are listed people who can help you. I personally have lessons online with a lady in Sweden who's been very helpful to me, and I hope that I can get her to speak to us as part of this group. But this group is to help you and give you information. Obviously, I can't give you a lesson, but it is to give you information, and hopefully you'll know where to go through the World Bitless site. And then, interesting talk, thank you. I'm a little concerned that if I spend a long time reinforcing to stand still, he'll never move. That's your seesaw. Whoa, whoa, go, it's balance. I think the key to that will be making sure I switch mats in between to get balance. Exactly, it's all about balance, also about having fun and being surprised. Because I'm telling you now, if you've never done this before, you'll go, oh my God, I still do that. Which bridle are you using? Ah, well, here you go. And I do need to tell you, this is the bridle that I've developed. This is one that Gatsby has been testing. This is my sample. This is a cob. I have an extra full. I have a full size. I have a pony. But I'm looking for people who need them trying on horses. So if you're in the North Wales area, or the Cheshire area, or the Wirral area, then that is a bridle, and it'd be great if you got in touch with me through the email, either the contact page on the Forageplus website. I won't sell it as a bridle complete. You'll be able to buy the brow band separately from the headstall, from the throat lash, from the cheek pieces, from the nose band, so that you can actually check the size of what your horse needs, because some horses need shorter cheek pieces, some horses need massive nosebands, some need small nosebands, there's no real thing. You'd like to try it, but you're not close to you. Well, there you go, you can't try. I'm only joking. I just need people now to try it for size. And then once I'm confident of the sizing, then I can order lots and I'll sell it through Forageplus. Anything else? I've started training school and like this. This has really helped my ex-racehorse. She now knows how to engage in thoracic thing and her back is less atrophied. But it does rely on a bit. I'm wondering whether it might be possible to go use bitless. Yes. Start training, understanding your hierarchy of cues, use positive reinforcement and rewards, and you definitely can go bitless. Definitely. I know her exact size as I had a bridle made. Well, that's good. There you go. Once it's available, you can buy it. Okie dokie.
Remember that piece?
Wow, when I've actually managed to fit it to a horse heads. Yeah, which is the people I can fit it on at your yard as well.
Oh, yes, there's loads.
So that would be good. A day at your yard, taking it on, taking it off, taking it on, take it off, and then it's not stiff because it was stiff when I tried it on Rosie one time. Yeah. Right, I think that's it then. So, oh, sorry, carry on.
Is Gatsby at a stage where you could take it to somebody else's arena and you would be as responsive?
Yes, he's very good at it. Probably very good at reputation. Oh my God, he was so good at that at Hadley Farm, wasn't he? Never been there.
So you could do a demonstration.
No, I'm not doing that.
But you get more people interested in it. If you could demonstrate.
No, no. Yes, me and Wendy don't like it. Sorry, everybody's there. Thank you, Sally, for coming. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you're on Zoom, I'm going to write you a thank you, and then I'm going to end the recording. I'll see you hopefully on the 23rd of September for the next one without a horse. Oh, thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much. It's a lot to talk about. I find it very hard not to spend 2 days talking.